Shalom, family, shalom. I hope you all are doing well. I am blessed and I'm back again with a quick video. Where do I start? In this world today, where the struggles of many nations are magnified, it often seems as if though the most oppressed, those who have endured the greatest historical traumas, are left unheard. It's almost as if the so-called black people's plight doesn't matter. The descendants of Israel, who have faced centuries of suffering, displacement, and spiritual blindness, are too often silenced or overlooked. Yet our pain is not just a story of the past, it is a key part of the present, revealing a deeper truth that has been hidden far too long. Why does it feel as if the cries of Israel are drowned out by the noise of others? Why does the trauma of those who have suffered most seem to matter less? This question goes beyond political or social debates. It strikes at the heart of a divine narrative. The suffering of Israel is not merely a tragedy. It is a prophetic journey that calls for recognition, repentance, and ultimately redemption. Understanding this truth is not just a matter of acknowledging history, but recognizing the future fulfillment of YAH'S promises. As we talk about this historical and ongoing struggle of Israel, we must ask ourselves, what does it mean for us today? What does it say about the world we live in and the world we are destined to inherit? This is not just about trauma. This is about the awakening of YAH'S people and the power of our redemption to change the course of history. Today I want to talk about the disproportionate focus on the issues of the other nations, often at the expense of the suffering of the nation that has endured the most historical trauma, especially the descendants of the enslaved Israelites. We have been minimized, misrepresented, or erased in dominant global narratives. While other nations and groups have certainly experienced trauma, the systemic silencing and denial of the struggles faced by these nations, particularly the oppression and slavery of Israel, have led to a lack of recognition of our historical trauma. This silence has had profound effects on our ability to heal, reclaim our identity, and advocate for ourselves in the global conversation. In the last few weeks, there has been something that has become so heavy in my spirit. There's a strategic element in play, especially with the context of the media and political narratives. It is clear the trauma and injustices of Israel will continue to be sidelined. Diverting attention away from the true heirs of the covenant keeps the focus on manufactured issues, allowing for easier control and manipulation. This strategic distraction serves to maintain the status quo, preventing meaningful change or justice for the oppressed. The historical trauma of Israel, our enslavement, dispersion, and current state of spiritual blindness is often ignored or distorted to prevent the awakening of the true identity of the Israelites. If our suffering in history were to be acknowledged, it would necessitate a reckoning with the prophecy that we are the people of the covenant, which has been hidden from the masses by the forces of deception. For those who understand the deeper spiritual significance of Israel's suffering, the mistreatment of our people is a sign of a larger prophetic fulfillment. It points to the fact that as Israel has suffered the most, it is also us who will be the first to awaken and lead others to truth. This awakening is crucial for the fulfillment of prophecy, yet the world does not want this truth to emerge because it signifies the end of a corrupt order and the restoration of YAH'S people. The global powers which often perpetrate these narratives tend to have an economic and political interest in keeping Israel and its descendants in a perpetual state of oppression and disempowerment. This allows for the continued exploitation of their resources, both physical and spiritual, while maintaining an illusion of stability. Ultimately, the suffering of Israel matters because it is a key component of the biblical prophecy and the eventual redemption of all people. It speaks to the heart for YAH'S plan for restoration, where the oppressed will be elevated and the covenant will be fulfilled. But until that truth is acknowledged and embraced, the struggles of Israel will continue to be obscured or overshadowed by narratives The awakening of Israel, however, will bring justice, healing, and truth to the forefront. Obviously, as you can tell, it's going to take an act of Yah for these people to tell the truth. The global powers play a crucial role in shaping public discourse and narratives about history, identity, and the fate of a certain people, such as Israel and its descendants. The narrative of Israel, its oppression, enslavement, and history of struggle is often obscured or manipulated to serve the agendas of those in power. These powers may downplay or ignore the true identity and plight of Israel to maintain control, avoid accountability for historical wrongs such as slavery, colonization, and displacement. The descendants of Israel, particularly those who have been historically oppressed, such as the African Americans, and those who have been scattered to the four corners of the earth, possess both physical and cultural resources that have been exploited for economic gain. These resources could include labor, natural resources in Africa and the Americas, and cultural heritage. The global powers benefit from maintaining the status quo, where the descendants of Israel continue to be marginalized and oppressed, as it allows for the continued extraction of wealth and labor from these groups without fair compensation or recognition. Politically, maintaining the disempowerment of Israel and its descendants serve to preserve existing power structures. Historically, when oppressed groups like Israel are kept disorganized, disempowered, or unaware of their true identity, they are less likely to challenge the status quo. The political elite in many nations rely on keeping Israel's descendants marginalized to ensure that they don't become a major political force capable of demanding their rights or reconstructing society in ways that would threaten the existing power dynamics. This refers to land, labor, and wealth that has been extracted from Israel and its descendants, especially in contexts such as slavery, colonization, or modern systemic racism. In the past, during the transatlantic slave trade, the so-called black people, many of whom were descendants of Israel, were used as a free labor force to build wealth for European and American powers. In modern times, these descendants often continue to face economic exploitation, whether through unfair wages, economic disenfranchisement, or the extraction of their labor in different forms. The so-called powers that be know that spirituality and religious identity are powerful sources of culture and identity. The descendants of Israel, the so-called black people, have maintained rich spiritual traditions despite centuries of oppression. Our faith and connection to the divine have been central to our survival and unity. However, these spiritual resources have been distorted by dominant religious or political powers. For an example, the true identity of the Israelites and our covenant with Yah, the Most High, is frequently obscured and/or misinterpreted in mainstream religious and historical narratives. The global powers benefit by keeping the true spiritual identity of Israel hidden. But why? Because it empowers us, giving us a foundation for unity, resistance, and eventual liberation. The system of oppression relies heavily on the creation of an illusion of stability, where the power structures appear to be functioning smoothly and justly. This illusion keeps the groups, including the descendants of Israel, from recognizing the extent of their oppression and the opportunities they have to challenge and change their circumstances. This illusion is maintained through media, politics, education, and even religion, all of which often present a skewed version of reality. By keeping Israel's true story hidden and our identity fragmented, the global powers prevent the rise of a cohesive resistance that could challenge their economic and political interests. A central part of this illusion is to continue to obscure the truth about Israel's identity and history. For an example, by misidentifying or distorting the biblical narrative of Israel and its descendants, those in power prevent the awakening of Israel, thus preserving their own position. If Israel were to recognize its true identity and take its rightful place in the world, it would disrupt the global power balance, threatening the dominance of those who benefit from our oppression. Throughout history, powers have used slavery, colonization, and segregation to economically exploit and politically disenfranchise Israel and their descendants. The transatlantic slave trade, the destruction of so-called black kingdoms, and the denial of land rights were all part of the global system designed to keep Israel's descendants in a state of powerlessness. Today, these historical systems are maintained through economic disparity, political disenfranchisement, and social exclusion. Whether through discriminatory policies in education, criminal justice, or housing, the descendants of Israel are still subjected to forms of oppression that prevent them from achieving full equality. The global powers benefit from this systemic equality because it allows them to maintain control over resources and people, ensuring that the descendants of Israel do not rise to challenge the status quo. In essence, the global powers, whether political, economic, or religious, have vested interest in keeping Israel and its descendants in a state of oppression and disempowerment. This disempowerment serves to maintain the current global power structure, where the marginalized remain in subordinate position, enabling the continued extraction of their resources, both physical and spiritual. By keeping Israel's true identity and power hidden, these powers maintain an illusion of stability that benefits them, preventing significant change or challenge to their dominance. In the modern society, especially in the United States, the criminal justice system disproportionately targets African Americans, in which are the true descendants of Israel. This phenomenon is often referred to as the prison industrial complex, where incarceration is used as a means to control, exploit, and profit from marginalized populations. Many private prisons in the U.S. profit from the incarceration of so-called black people. The more prisoners they have, the more money they make. This encourages a system where certain communities, including descendants of Israel, are disproportionately arrested, convicted, and imprisoned. The system creates a form of debt, both literal in terms of money owned for prison services fees, etc., and metaphorical in terms of the time and life lost to the prison system. Prisoners, especially those from marginalized communities, are often forced to work in prison industries for little to no pay. They produce goods, services, and even labor for corporations who benefit from their forced labor, which keeps them trapped in a cycle of exploitation. This continues the legacy of enslaving people and extracting value from them without offering adequate compensation or support for their rehabilitation or future. Once released, many formerly incarcerated individuals are left with overwhelming debts from fines, fees, and costs related to their incarceration. These debts, combined with the challenges of finding employment, housing, and stability, keep them trapped in a system of economic exploitation. Their economic disempowerment often prevents them from being able to invest in their own future or their communities, thus maintaining the cycle of oppression. The elite benefit by profiting from the prison system and by ensuring that this group remains disempowered, unable to contribute meaningfully to society or challenge the existing power structures. The lies spoken about Israel and our descendants are not only physical, but also deeply spiritual. Historically, the true identity of Israel and its people has been obscured, manipulated, or erased by those in power. For centuries, narratives about Israel's descendants have been distorted, often presenting our history as one of perpetual victimhood without recognizing our covenant and role in prophetic fulfillment. Mainstream religious institutions, particularly within Christianity, have perpetuated the idea of replacement theology, which asserts the church has replaced Israel in God's covenant. This has led to spiritual disconnection for the descendants of Israel, as we have been denied our rightful place in the spiritual narrative. The elite often support this view because it keeps Israel's descendants spiritually blind to their true identity, preventing them from realizing the fullness of our power and purpose. If Israel's true identity were revealed, it would challenge the religious, social, and political power structures that benefit from keeping the people fragmented and confused. The history of Israel's suffering, particularly the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, and the ongoing struggles faced by its descendants, is minimized or outright erased in the mainstream narrative. By lying about their history, the elite are able to continue exploiting their labor, resources, and culture. This also allows them to control the historical and spiritual narrative, maintaining a position of dominance while keeping the oppressed ignorant of their true heritage, purpose, and power. The global elite use lies and manipulation to keep Israel's descendants disempowered. If Israel were to recognize its identity and divine covenant, it would likely awaken to the realization of its spiritual and political power. This could lead to a unified movement to challenge the systemic injustices and inequalities that have been imposed upon them. By keeping Israel's true story hidden, whether through false historical narratives, religious misrepresentation, or cultural distortion, the elite prevent Israel from coming into their true power. The lies often promote division among people of the same heritage, culture, and spiritual identity. For instance, through colonialism and forced assimilation, the descendants of Israel were divided from one another and pitted against each other. This internal division makes it harder for them to unite and challenge the system of oppression. It also keeps them disorganized and unaware of their collective strength, which benefits the elite by preventing any organized resistance. The elite benefit from Israel's continued disempowerment and exploitation in multiple ways. Economic benefit: by keeping Israel's descendants trapped in cycles of poverty, incarceration, and disenfranchisement, the elite continue to extract value from their labor, culture, and resources. Whether it's through the prison industrial complex, low-wage labor, or cultural appropriation, Israel's descendants remain a valuable economic resource for the elite. By keeping Israel and its descendants marginalized, the elite can maintain political control. A disempowered group is less likely to challenge policies that benefit the powerful and maintain the existing status quo. The elite can continue to set the terms of economic and political engagement, while Israel remains sidelined and unable to influence the system. The lies about Israel's identity also serve to maintain spiritual and cultural domination. By distorting the religious history and keeping Israel's descendants disconnected from their true heritage, the elite can ensure that their own spiritual beliefs and institutions remain dominant. The elite control the narrative, making it difficult for Israel to reclaim its rightful position as the people of the covenant. In closing, I would like to say that Yah is in control, and his plan cannot be prevented by the wickedness of this world. No system, no power, no force can stop the awakening of his remnant. The time is coming when he will pour out his spirit upon all his people, stirring hearts and opening eyes to the truth. This awakening will happen. In fact, it's happening now. Not by the permission of man, but by the will of Yah. His covenant stands firm, and his promises will be fulfilled. The remnant will rise, and no power on earth can prevent it. Hallelujah. Thank you all for listening. May the Most High bless you and keep you all safe in this hour. Remember Matthew chapter 24 and verse 13. He that endures until the end, the same shall be saved. And until my next video, Shalom.